I think I did, finally. Oh, my dog is so far away in that camera. She's like a little tiny speck. A little tiny speck in the back there. Zoom and enhance. There we go. That's better. A little doggo cam action for you guys. There we go. Okay, we are here. We have made it, finally. If you were not here last week, then you guys don't know what happened, which is I tried for 2 hours, more than that actually, to try and stream, and it kept crashing my whole computer. Knock on wood, that won't happen again here today. I have every reason to believe that I have fixed all the tech issues associated with the crash from last Friday. I streamed twice this week earlier, totally normal, totally fine. So I think we should be good here today, and I'm glad you all could make it. And it's been a week, it has been a week. You're banned for the next Pokemon Snap DLC. Listen, Rockruff is my favorite dog Pokemon for a reason. Rockruff is definitely, I don't know if he's my favorite Pokemon, in the top 10 for sure, and my favorite dog Pokemon, right up there with Fido. Which, I like the concept of Fido, I think, more than the actual character design of Fido, but the concept is really just gold. So I'm glad you all could make it back here, and I hopefully can make this worth it for all of you all. We have a new video that came out today that is on KinkTok, which is the kinky side of TikTok. That was really fun to make. I think I will do a second version of this KinkTok video at some point in the future. I'll probably make some kind of form or something you guys can use to like submit links to your favorite kinky TikToks. I don't know how to make that work exactly, but I think that would be a really good way to maybe find some more niche accounts or people that just like aren't on my radar, because I'm not really on TikTok. So that was really fun. If you guys haven't seen that yet, it came out earlier today. And for today, if you guys are new here, this is an interactive Q&A. We hang out for about 2 hours here on Friday nights, and you guys ask questions and I answer them. We usually talk about things related to kink, BDSM, relationships, dating apps, sex, asexuality, queer issues, pop culture, all the various happenings on. I feel like there was something that happened that was really big last week that I wanted to talk about, and then I didn't get a chance to because of the fact that like my computer crashed like 8 times. It took me like it took me until 8:30 to be able to like troubleshoot the stream. I thought I fixed it. I had to leave to go to an event that I told a friend I was already going to go to. And then I came home, and then I worked on it again for another hour, and then I went to sleep because it was 2 a.m. And then I stayed up again the next day to also fix it, and that's when I actually fixed it, was the next day. It took me like, it was a lot of work to try and fully figure it out. But was there something? Because there was Danny Masterson. That was in the news. And then what was he? Oh, Russell Brand. Russell Brand. I think that was like maybe the big news item of the week that had come out. And I was debating whether or not to cover it because, I mean, Russell Brand is a YouTuber. And so it's like, it's weird because it's kind of like, I feel like YouTube, like with 8 passengers and now with Russell Brand, a little bit of a brand issue, we could say here. You know. A little bit of a brand issue. Anyways, before we get too far into it, I do want to say this is an 18 plus only stream. We do have rules and FAQ down below, linked in the description box. We have a wonderful list of resources down there for answers to common questions and just really basic guidelines here. Treat everyone with respect, listen to the mods, please read the FAQ, and then in terms of things I won't answer, if it's anything, you know, overly personal, I'm going to skip over it. And I also don't give advice on medical or mental health issues. So if you're wondering if like a bruise from last week is healing correctly, or if you're wondering about whether or not doing a particular kink is okay with your particular mental illness, I don't necessarily have the expertise to be able to help you with that, but I am happy to help direct you to resources, some of which are down below. So as long as we're just being respectful, that's really the main big thing. Please don't spam the chat. I know, especially when these chats get going and they're fiery, we're having a good conversation, it can seem like your question's getting lost. I always keep an eye on like the chat in two different ways. I have kind of currently happening chat in one eye, and then like past chat where I am scrolling through and looking for questions. So I answer things in the order they come in. And if you want to make sure that I see your question, you can highlight it either with a super chat, it'll pop up here, or you can also go to Streamlabs down below. It does the same thing. It'll highlight your question. I'll get to it right away. Otherwise, I go in the order they come in. So showing up early for streams is always a good idea, because then it's more likely your question is going to get answered. So with that being said, I don't know. We'll have to see what the current questions are. We'll have to see what is going on. Oh, for a second I thought it said I had 10 viewers, which is like, that's not normal. Oh, YouTube is angry about my bit rate. Oh, I know why that is. That's not like a stream problem. Like a quality might be a little bit lower. That was one of the things I did to try and fix the live stream issue. One of the first things I tried was lowering the bit rate, and I don't think I increased it back up to what the bit rate was before. So I have to remember that for next time to do that. Yes, I have chameleon eyes. It's true. All right, let us see what is going on with the people in the chat. Saw the link earlier, but for some reason waited for the notification. I mean, that happens. YouTube is asynchronous, and it likes to give people notifications of things long after they have happened occasionally. 2 months till I can quit my job, and I'm already having major senioritis. I've never heard somebody refer to quitting their job as having senioritis, but I understand that mentality of like, you're just like, I'm phoning it in because I'm almost done. Yeah, I never really actually had senioritis too badly, because I had like AP exams and stuff, so like that's like at the very end of the school year anyways. But after AP exams, when literally nothing matters, yeah, then that's when you're like, all right, time to sit back and watch the Harry Potter movies or whatever it was I did in those AP classes after the exams were over. Good times. Oh, that's a good idea. Keeping up with volunteer stuff to keep up with experience. Should I need to return to workforce someday? Yeah, that is a great idea. I definitely recommend keeping up with volunteering in that case. Always a good thing to do. But that's exciting. Life transitions, moving on to the next stage of life, not working in retail anymore. That is awesome. Did any of y'all go to the Folsom Street Fair? I am very curious to hear about this, because I have not been to Folsom in quite a number of years now.
Rosie Rosette donated $5. Not kink related, but I have a question. How many languages can you count to 10 in?
How many languages can I get to 10 in? Definitely Spanish, and then sign language, and like American Sign Language, and I used to be able to do Korean, and then I feel like I vaguely remember Japanese. I don't know, at some point I just picked all these up. I know a couple of them in French and a couple of them in German, but not all of them. Classic American problem of not really having a good language education system. So, yeah, and English. Yeah, of course, obviously. I mean, honestly, English, sometimes questionable when it comes to me, so not necessarily a bad idea. Bandit is an incognito mode. That is a great way of describing it. That's very accurate. Okay. Yes, I have not been to Folsom Street Fair in a long time. I think the last year I went was the year that COVID happened. So, like, it was that, because it's in September, and then that winter is when COVID happened. So, it would have been 2019. I was last year I went, and I had a great time. It's, for me, because I go to conventions and things, like, you know, semi-regularly, like once or twice a year, Folsom isn't like a huge deal to me. I think if I was local to San Francisco, it would be a huge deal, because if you guys don't know what Folsom Street Fair is, it usually makes the rounds around Pride Month, even though it's several months away from Pride Month, because people online like to take pictures of it and then say, look at all the terrible people exposing the children to their perversions. And it's like, First of all, they say not to bring your kids. Second of all, not a pride event. Third of all, not even actually what's happening there. It's a kink event for kinky people, by kinky people, and then people come to looky-loo and cause problems. You've got things backwards. This is a sanctioned event by the city. You have to go through a line to be able to get into it. It's a whole different thing. So if you guys have seen photos of, usually see people wearing like bondage gear, it's probably from Folsom. I usually can recognize the walls, the background of the photos, and be like, I know where that is. That's that building. I've walked by there before. But it's a really, really awesome sort of outdoor, I would say, stationary street fair where they block off a couple of blocks around Folsom Street, and there's food and drink. There's tons of vendors. It's an adult-only space where you can go and either participate in or see people do public play. You will get lots of people who go and like looky-loo with cameras and like take pictures. I think that's gotten worse and worse over the years, which is partly the reason why I don't make like plans to go and travel to it. I think if I was local, I would go because there's tons of like mixers, pre-events, post-events, after parties. It's a really, really big get-together. If I was in California, I would definitely make an effort to go there and like reserve that weekend to go. But because I would be flying from out of town, and like flying always being a problem, and you gotta have somebody watch the dog, and you gotta like the flights and the hotel room and everything else, that ends up becoming quite the expense to go there. And I do like going, but it's like a one-day fair, and when I have gone in previous years, it has always been so packed and busy to go to the surrounding events at local venues like dungeons, like after parties, like mixers, and I don't like that experience even pre-COVID. Like, Lord, the party I went to at Folsom, I think it was in 2018, the first year I went. Maybe it was 2017. It was one of those, somewhere between 2017 and 2019. I remember going to this really big dungeon party, and it was packed to the gills with people, like standing room only. They had like, you know, when you're in line for a movie and there's that velvet rope, like pathway they'll put out to like get people to go certain ways for lines, like that. You had to go through there, and like if you were in the play areas, it was sectioned off, like only the people playing could be in the play areas. They actually did a really good job of doing crowd control so that way people who were in the scene didn't feel crushed by people. But if you were just trying to socialize, it was like trying to socialize in like the middle of a football game. It was just not happening otherwise. So it was great to have that experience. And I think even the second year that we went, if I remember correctly which years happened in what order, the second year that we went, we actually were hanging out with a group of friends that were local to SF at the time. And it was after the big fair, we were relaxing, and we were like, do we really want to go out to the parties? Can we just stay here? And we just like hung out as a group and like did stuff in the suite that they were staying in, and like that was really fun. But I don't think I would go back for the parties unless I was local and like I knew people there. I think it was just very difficult. But like the fair was really nice. Like I got to meet Pup Amp and Mr. Christopher, and like getting to meet up with them was always really fun. But yeah, it was a fun event, but it's just the size of the event, like what the event itself actually is versus the time and travel expense and how busy everything is not really my favorite. And then also, like I was saying, Folsom Street Fair definitely attracts the looky-loos because it is a public event that is sanctioned by the city of San Francisco. And so they have very strongly worded language about like, please don't bring your minor children, please be respectful, but they can't really stop anyone legally from like using the road or like to walk down the pathways. And so like technically some people fudge it. I personally have never seen children at Folsom the 2 years that I went there. I'm sure it happens at some point, but you will get people who show up and try to do some kind of like religious counter protesting thing, which is very bizarre. Oh, you are so welcome. Morgan Faye says, thank you for your asexual vid. I sent it to my paramour as I started an in-scene-only DS dynamic with a longtime friend that's asexual. My paramour was very confused about asexuality. Well, I am so glad to help with that because trust me, lots of people are very confused about asexuality, and I have lots of personal experience trying to explain that to people, and I do the best that I can. So I appreciate it. Thank you. I am glad that that helped. But yeah, Folsom, you definitely get looky-loos. You definitely get people who take pictures and, you know, will take video and stuff. And like most of the time, I mean, who knows really? Most of the time it feels like people will usually ask. But I imagine over the last couple of years, because it's gotten a level of notoriety from people on like the online right or whoever that think it's kind of just like this symbol of liberal degeneracy, they will go there and try to cause a fuss. But usually the counter protester group is pretty small, but you'd have to worry about people like taking a photo of you and like putting it on the internet. Like there are people who literally go, and I'm sure they take photos for their own personal private collection, you know what I mean? Or they take photos and they sell the photos of Folsom, but it's like they don't have, but there's the people in the photos and they don't even know they're there, and then suddenly you're on the cover of like a local newspaper or somebody's blog or YouTube video for like being representative of like that freak show, and you're like, I didn't even know somebody was taking that photo. So if you're very concerned about like privacy and discretion, I would go to Folsom wearing like a full pony face mask or like a latex hood with like eye holes with nothing else. Well, sometimes nothing else, literally nothing else, but also like just mean like, you know, having everything covered up and like not having anything showing your bodily parts or identifying features, because you just, Folsom is not as private as most other kink events are, which can be a really great thing if what you want to do is explore like public play, but if what you want to do is explore privacy, can't really do that at Folsom. And certainly like going earlier to Folsom I think is a good thing. Usually it gets much more busy, crowded, and much more adult and like sexual the later it goes on. I always want like as early as possible in the day, because it can get really hot, and like this year I think it was pretty hot still too. But I really enjoyed it. It was a great time. I would certainly go back again in the future if I had maybe some reason to be down there for like a longer period of time. Like I think if I could make like maybe a week trip out of it, where I was either there for like the kind of 5 days before or 5 days after, even like 3 days. Like if I could make like a 4-day weekend trip out of it and explore the city, explore the scene a little bit more, I think it could be worth it. But again, it just gets to be really, really crowded and like a zoo. So yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, you mean like a metamor? Yeah. So, I mean, if the metamor usually means a partner's partner. A paramour is like a lover. So, if you don't know the origin of that band name, now you know. I think I've also heard people use paramour and metamor. I would say it's not very common to hear it used interchangeably, but I usually hear people say they have a paramour and metamors. But you know, I mean, that's the thing about terms, right? We can always make up our own definition and usages for them, and certainly people will refer to their metamor as a paramour.
Mr. Beansman donated $5. Played with a new bottom for Impact, and she's a much bigger masochist than anyone I've played with before, and I was getting nervous going harder than I'm used to when she asked any advice. For Impact, and she's a much bigger masochist than anyone I've played with before, and I was getting nervous going harder than I'm used to when she asked any advice. So I think I know who you're talking about, because I think we've talked about this before, either in other live streams or during one of our chats. But I think that for anytime you're playing with a new person, I think, especially as a top, and I get this feeling, you want to impress the other person. You want to be able to prove how hard you can go and that you can keep up with them, and that like you're going to be as like toppy as they need you to be, quote unquote, right? As they need you to be. My hair is just like very staticky, like I don't know what is happening. I think the weather's changing. It's making my hair crazy, but it's driving me nuts because I can feel how like staticky it is and like, ugh. But don't have a proper way to solve the static issue. Anyways, so just me, just knowing things about myself. But it's really tempting with new partners. It's kind of like going on a first date, right? Like you want to impress the person. You want to seem like you're as toppy or domly as you have sold yourself to be. You want to leave a good impression, especially for somebody who's like a heavier masochist. You know, so that way they want to play with you again. But I would think about it more like an introduction, and it was sort of like a first date, really, but not even that you have to make a perfect first impression, but that this is your first shot, right? Like this is
a scene that you calibrate off of. It's not like, it's like taking the car for a test drive. Yes, you are driving the car. It's a real car. It's a real road. You're really driving it. But it's very different from like taking it out afterwards for a joyride all weekend or driving it at night on the highway. Like, you're testing the conditions to see how everything handles, right? You want to see, how do they communicate? How do I communicate? What is their attitude like? What do they like? What do they dislike? Is there anything they told me in our negotiations that ended up being different in practice? What were those things? How different were they? Why was that? What's their aftercare routine like? Do they need more? Do they need less? How do they like playing with me, right? Do they like playing with me? Do we have chemistry together or not? Because, like, yeah, you can plan for a first-time scene to be like a hook suspension from the ceiling, but for most people, I mean, unless you're just only into hook pulls, and I know certainly people are like that in the kink scene, but you know, for most people, you want to ramp your way up there because part of what makes kink feel really good is that deeper emotional connection that you usually build over time. So you start here, you start low, and yes, I think, at least for the good tops and doms I know, their motto when I negotiate with them is they want to leave me wanting more. They want to know that there's a little bit left in the tank. They want to leave about 10 to 20% in the tank that we could have gone farther that we didn't actually go to the first time. And then maybe next time it's like 5 to 10. And then after there we can go all the way if we want to. But I think this is another thing that people get fixated on, is that sort of like the most intense scenes are the best scenes. And sometimes that's true. I'm not going to discount the enjoyability of a very intense scene, but also you can play at like 50% of your max capacity and have a really fun time. And so if what you're worried about is, I've gone at 100%, I can't go more, and I don't know what to do now with this person, or I've gone to 100% within my limits for right now, I could go farther in the future, but I can't because I'm not there yet with this person emotionally or just security-wise or experience-wise or whatever. You know, you have room to expand it if you want to. So instead of thinking about just like going harder with the implements, because like naturally at some point, all of us have a limitation for our skill set, how hard we can go, how long we can go, what types of toys we have available to us, the setting that we're in. I think at some point you got to redirect focusing and making the intensity more with other things. That could be role play. That could be not doing a warm-up beforehand. That could be using heavy bondage. That could be having some other kind of restriction or tool in place, right? You could do predicament bondage. You could have really heavy sensory deprivation. You could, you know, have some kind of system in place where maybe you're like keeping tally of every single time they mess up, or maybe you give them like an impossible challenge to do where they have to go through the entire scene without making a single noise. And if you so much as hear them breathe too loudly, they get a tally on their like bad girl sheet. And then if they have a certain number of tallies on that sheet, then like something bad happens. You could also think about things like temperature or electricity too, because like I think especially with impact play, again, there's a lot of natural limitations there, especially with a masochist or a bottom who's very used to playing in those areas. You can only go so far with the tools that you have, literally. And so maybe the way you ramp up the intensity is you layer on like sensation play beforehand. You know, you pull out the sandpaper, you pull out the scratchy carpet square you got from the carpet store, or you get like gardening gloves that have like a rough texture on them and use that to abrade the skin beforehand, so that when you get into the caning, the spanking, the whatever, it's that much more intense because you've literally sensitized the skin ahead of time to make it more intense. You could always make it mentally more intense. Like you could make them hold an onion in their mouth. You could make them have to, you know, like there's so many different things here, right? There's like the one classic thing I remember that will always stick with me from this one convention I went to years ago now is somebody suggested something called, I think it's alum. It's let me make sure I'm spelling this correctly because it's been a while since I think it's ALUM.
Alum.
Oh wait, I unplugged my headphones. I can't actually hear this.
Alum. Alum.
Alum. Oh, alum. Okay, that was not the A sound I thought I made, or whatever. So alum, and it is a hydrated double sulfate salt of aluminium, in case you were wondering. And it is something that if you put a little bit, it's a baking thing. If you put a little bit on somebody's tongue, it will make them drool like crazy. So you can also think about tools like that, right? You could use a gag. I know a lot of people, for example, you can get, there's like these there's like this particular style of nipple clamps that sometimes you'll see, like I would not recommend doing this with like bamboo chopsticks, but just to give a really easy visual for this, it's essentially like two bamboo chopsticks that were split in half, and then you have like a little like plastic ring on either side, and it clamps down in the middle. Those can be used for nipple clamps or around the tongue. You can also use other tools to make the scene more intense in terms of sensation, right? You can use blindfolds. I'm kind of just like rambling on and on here. I have videos I know where I've talked about this, but the point is that you can make other elements of the scene really intense. Like, I promise you, if you're making them drool nonstop into a bucket, and while you're spanking them, and then you fucking like dump the bucket of spit back onto their own face at the end of the scene, like, they're not going to be worried about the fact that, like, he could have gone 10% harder with that cane. They're going to be thinking about the fact that they had spit dumped over them, like, at the fucking slime bucket at Nickelodeon. Like, that's what they're going to be thinking about. They sold a crystal deodorant. I had no idea. Yes. Yeah, the carpet squares, I think, are that's speaking for myself there. Also, coconut rope, other tools certainly you can use. There's like so much stuff to make that sensation more intense. And like, if you're making them drool into a bucket and then like you put tens unit pads on like their arms or their legs or something, so they're twitching constantly so they can't keep themselves upright, and then you're also hitting them at the same time, I promise it's going to make everything else you're doing really intense. So just like layer things. We're making it more complicated. Also, my dog moved at some point. Anyways, I'm full of terrible ideas. I don't know why you people listen to me. These are all awful. I just suggested like, I just suggested slime bucketing somebody. So like, oh God. Yeah, it is funny. I mean, like, I have ideas because I both like things that I experience for happening to me, and also things that happen that I want to do to other people. So I'm an assistant. I'm the idea guy. I am the female idea guy. Slime spit buckets are a hard limit. I mean, think about it though. You could literally get like green Halloween slime. Use it for your next Halloween scene. It'll be very fun, I promise. Yes, the content I stay here for. I like these awful ideas. It's very funny. Well, I mean, like, you never know. Like, I know so many people that do very funny scenes that, like, are so unserious, and they're always so enjoyable for the people that do them. So, it just, you don't have to always be super serious at the time, and, yeah. It's awfully good. Well, I'm glad that you guys think so. So, yeah, those are just some of the ways you can increase the intensity of a scene. But really, also, I think at the end of the day, more than anything, it's always worth mentioning this, and I'm going to assume that most people know to do this, but I'll just say it to say it. Check in with your partner. Talk to them. Like, if you're worried about, like, being able to go hard enough for them, you can talk about that, right? You can do your scene debriefing, and you can say, hey, I really enjoyed getting to play with you at that play party last weekend, and I've been thinking about our scene, and I'm wondering, like, what would you want to do differently for next time? And then they can tell you whether or not what they want is more intensity, or they want to go deeper, or they want a different kind of play, or they want to add bondage in. Because that's also something, too, with, like, newer scenes, is I generally, it's like, no matter what I'm doing, I don't like layering on a bunch of stuff for a first scene. Like, if we're doing impact play, we're only doing impact play, okay? We're not adding in sensory depth and bondage and spit buckets and whatever else. Like, we're just doing impact play because I want to make it as simple as possible to communicate during the scene, especially if something feels wrong. Like, if I don't feel good during a scene and I'm having a bad time, I don't want to be being hit at the same time and then also be wearing a blindfold and have manacles on and then, like, have more difficulty trying to communicate than I otherwise would. So I just like going really simple, and then for future scenes, you can add on more on top of that, and that maybe is like the ticket for them. Honestly, a non-saliva slime bucket is a great idea. Yeah, there's a reason J-Lube is very popular in the scene. I'm sure you could get actual Halloween slime, but also you can just get J-Lube if it's not Halloween. I don't think you can dye J-Lube, though. I've never tried that before. Electron impact layered isn't a bad idea. I'm not a brat, but I appreciate it. I'm glad that you like it. But no, I am, I don't even know. I'm not a brat. I have ideas. Because I'm not talking about, like, I want to do a scene like this. I'm like helping other people have more fun scenes. So I guess if that makes me a brat, I technically am. It just feels like that's not a brat thing. It just feels like a helper thing. Like, to me, this comes from a place of, like, service. Like, I'm like, oh, people want to have fun? I can help them have fun. Here's how. Like, that's how it feels for me mentally. I love electroplay. And there's so much to do with it, too. Like, I didn't talk about this in, like, kinks I've changed my mind about, I don't think. But I should have. Because electroplay is something I have tried my damnness to have a different relationship to. And I have tried every different type of electrical device there is. I've tried violet wands, I've tried TENS units, I've tried like the standalone solid state ones, I've tried so many different ones, and the only one that I kind of like is TENS units. And I only really like that one in like a bondage context, and not for any sort of like pain. Like, I don't like it from a pain perspective. I like it when it's it's to the point where it makes you twitchy, but it doesn't feel painful. Or it's only a little bit painful. That's more what I like it for. But like electroplay pain, I just don't like it. It's just not my thing. And like, I'm not surprised it's not my thing. It's just kind of disappointing a little bit because it just limits my options. But it's good to have answers, you know, honestly. Like, that's the most important thing I've really discovered in being in the kink scene for as long as I've been in it, is it doesn't matter if your kink ingredients list you have to work with for making a recipe, i.e. a scene, is like 2 ingredients or 200. It's knowing what's actually in your pantry that's available to you that matters. And like, you can really, 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 really wish something was in your pantry and still not have it. And for me, wax play with partners and electroplay are 2 things that would be fun to have in the toolkit or in my pantry, but are not available in my pantry. So I make do knowing they're not there, and just having that discernment, I think, is very vital, and I'm glad that I have it. But, you know, I mourn the loss of having more diversity in my kink, because I've certainly, you know, met people that I think otherwise would have been really good partners that, you know, even just for play purposes, that are like, that's their kink. Like it's interesting how often I have gone on dates and like I talk to somebody who's like interested in kink, but they have like one kink. Like and maybe it's because they're not really in the kink community yet, and so they haven't been exposed to the whole like range of things that they could be doing. And maybe that's my own perception of it, but a lot of people that I've met that I've gone on dates with that like could have been partners, a lot of them have like a kink. Like, they're into hypnosis, they're into dollification, they're into fucking, I don't know, like impact play, they're into like baby girl spit in her mouth type stuff or whatever. Yeah, luckily, those are all just random examples. They're not actually reflective of anyone I know in real life, but those are just some things to go off of. Like, it's just like some people, they have like a thing, or like spanking or something, and that's great. But it's interesting. Like, I think that's more common than maybe we give it credit for. Thank you for saying that. I absolutely hate electroplay. I mean, honestly, I really think that there's something like mental about it that exists on a deeper level that's not something you can like consciously work through if you just like try hard enough, you know? Oh my gosh, thank you. You are so welcome, Cable Jones. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your super chat. And Bendita also says, thank you. You guys don't know. Oh, this is something I wanted to tell you guys about. So last week, Bendita, the precious little doggo you see in the corner down here, she went in for a dental cleaning. And because she's a small dog, that means they put her under anesthetic. They do a full cleaning. And she has always had problem teeth. I'm going to dog talk for 2 minutes. She has always had problem teeth. I got her when she was 7 going on 8. And I don't think she had ever had any previous dental care prior to me getting her. So every year it's like a struggle to get her teeth cleaned, or even sometimes every 6 months there for a while we had to go in. And finally, we've gotten to a point now where all of the problem teeth are taken care of. She's lost a couple of teeth along the way, having to get them extracted. But we are now on the road to healthy teeth for the future to come. We've taken care of all the problem ones, and everything seems to be, according to this vet at least, on a stable path, as opposed to needing to be monitored for a future problem. So I'm very happy to say that. And she's been great. You wouldn't even know that she had surgery and 2 teeth removed. She's just been hanging out her normal chipper, spry self, barking outside in the yard, carrying on. It was only the first day after she was coming up out after the anesthetic that, she was in any way sluggish or different, but she's happy. She loved everyone. The vet said that she did great. She had an easy time. Everything went great. So that's a little doggo update for you in case you're wondering. I highly recommend if you guys have small dogs. I know that they are very prone to dental decay, and that's been our struggle. Is I do everything for her that I possibly could be, and it's still a problem. There is something that is called IOVET, literally IOVET, and it is an iodine solution you can add to your dog's water, and that has made a concrete difference in her dental health. And I'm saying this because I love animals. I'm not sponsored by the company. I don't even know how that would even happen. I just genuinely think it really helps. I know so many people struggle with helping their dogs have good dental hygiene, and it makes a big difference. It's super simple. It's better than any other water additive that's on the market, because most of them only really do frankly, they only really ever freshen their breath for a little bit after they have just drank the water. This actually makes a difference. So if you want to check that out, it's an iodine supplement. I don't know how much it is. I don't think it's too expensive. I've had the same tiny bottle of it for, I don't know, 8 months now at this point, and it's not even done yet. I'll probably get another month out of it at least. So anyways, dog updates. Yeah, if you want to bring whoever onto the stream you want to. All right, I am going to go and look for some more questions, because I've only answered 2 so far, so let's get through that. Ooh, you pick up your new car in 15 hours. Congratulations, how exciting. Yes. I just wish it was on my terms and not needing a new engine that costs more than I pay for the car. Oh, that sucks, yeah. I feel that's cars. Either you get the one you want and you're ready for it, or it's because you've had some kind of catastrophic issue with your existing car and it's been a junker the entire time you've had it. So, there's never really any in between, is there? Oh, a good question, Christian. Is it normal to get a wraparound when getting flogged, as I just experienced it and that hurt like hell? Okay, so Christian, so for people who don't know what wrapping is, so I'm not in the room with my flogger, but I also probably couldn't show one on YouTube anyway, so I'll just demonstrate with my finger. So with a flogger, ideally what you want to do is you want to hit on directly onto where you're trying to actually hit, right? Or roughly around it, right? If you hit too far past it, especially with a longer flogger, you end up wrapping around and then going around like this, right? And it ends up being much more concentrated and intense when you wrap around and all the energy ends up going on that side of the flogger falls, as opposed to just into directly what surface you were trying to hit to begin with. I know people that love the sensation of wrapping. I know people that hate it. Generally speaking, if you're not trying to do it on purpose, wrapping is considered bad flogging technique. It's something that usually happens by accident. Now, even with the most experienced person, even with somebody who is flogging exactly correctly 99% of the time during the scene, that is a 1% error, and if you're flogging for 2 hours, you're going to be making probably what? at least 60 errors, and like one of those things could be wrapping. So if it's like the whole scene is wrapping and like they can't quite seem to be able to aim correctly, I would consider that to be a red flag for their technique or possibly misleading you about what their skill level is. However, if it's like a one-time accidental thing, like it happens, like sometimes we wiggle or they change their angle and they don't really realize it or whatever, like things happen as part of a scene. But yeah, generally it's intense. That's why it's not supposed to happen. And yeah, it's like, it's an interesting physics question for, I'm not sure how to explain that in like physics terminology. I've never taken physics before, but you know, it's all the energy kind of gets redirected around. Oh, sorry, microphone. And that usually tends to be unpleasant, especially because most locations we tend to wrap to. Like the back feels really great. If you wrap on the back, you're usually hitting the rib cage, which is not pleasant. Or if you are trying to hit somebody on the butt, you wrap onto the hip bones. That's also not very pleasant. So it's also a combination of not just the force of the hit itself, but also that the wrap locations where the wrap lands on tend to be more sensitive parts in the body to begin with anyways. But yeah, it's very much a personal, individual experience. I got wrapped bad by a dragon tail by someone who'd been doing this for 10 years. I mean, it happens. Like, especially if you're playing with a new partner, that's also part of the reason why generally it's said that you shouldn't play at like 100% intensity with a new partner is, you know, if you're going really hard and you make a mistake, which can happen when you don't really know their body that well yet, or their cues or how they move, you know, it can happen. And I'm not saying to blame bottoms and all, where it's like, it's your fault because you moved. But that's like one of the factors to consider too, right? It's like if you're playing with somebody for a long time, they can develop a sense of your cues for like, oh, they're moving around. This is kind of how much they usually move. You know, they're going to do this for the rest of the scene. They're going to slow down for 5 minutes, like whatever it is. They are going to be able to predict you a little bit better, to know how to move with you during the scene, as opposed to like, if you've never played with somebody before and you're 20 minutes in and suddenly start doing the salsa, or you do the goddess is the Macarena in her brain or whatever. 50 Shades reference there for all the haters getting their 50 Shades hate in today. Because it's like, isn't it like my inner goddess does the salsa? Isn't it something like that? Anyways, yeah, it's like, you know, you're like, okay, they're swaying around a lot. Is this normal? Like, is this, they're going, what are they, okay, they are doing some fucking breakdancing moves now. Like if you don't know what to expect, you don't know what to do to react, right? So, yeah, I think that makes sense for, you know, why that would potentially cause some issues. But this is why it's a thing to know about. I dislike rapping. Oh, no, wait, I missed it. Shoot, where'd it go? Frick. Oh, thank you so much, Alex Smith. I love the little doggy avatar. Thank you for your super chat. Growing up semi-religious, purity culture has affected my brain. My inner logical thoughts think it's ridiculous, but occasionally my emotional thoughts still associate purity in others as a sign of comfort, stability, and peace. I also take a lot of inner work, but do you have any experience or anyone you know have similar experiences? Sarah's question crosses the mental health line. No, you're totally cool. Actually, Alex, this gives me a great opportunity to recommend a YouTuber I've really been enjoying lately. And she is a therapist. And so she is qualified to talk about this. And she has like videos where she like reacts to like also, dating shows and stuff like that. And she actually, the thing I really like that she does is she has a podcast that's called There's a Lot to Unpack Here. She does with her spouse, and they're very cute together, and they talk about what it was like growing up and you know, what it was like being sort of unintentionally a little bit like fundamentalist, fundy light, where they grew up more religiously conservative and how that affected them. And she has a lot of content dealing with, you know, guilt and shame around religiosity and that like affecting your sex life. And I'm trying to find a way to link to her YouTube channel. I think it's probably, it's Mickey Adkins. I'm just going to go ahead and put that in the stream here. You guys can check it out, Mickey Adkins. She's really great as far as, let me back up here for a second. Let me read this. The religious purity culture affected my brain. But I mean, I will be honest here. I think a lot of people I know that have grown up with a very intense religious upbringing where especially there was a lot of shame and guilt around sex, where like the kind of thing where it's like sex is evil and wrong and bad outside of marriage, and if you ever do it ever for any reason, you will die on the spot, you will go to hell. It's natural. That would take a lot of work to go through, and I think probably having a mental health professional that has experience with that, that knows about that, will most likely bring you the greatest amount of peace over time in the long run. However, it sounds like to me right now, more what you're working through is you have mental associations where purity equals comfort, safety, security, stability, and peacefulness, and therefore that things that are not pure cannot be comfortable, stable, peaceful, etc. Sorry to slap my own thigh. Hi, doggo. I'm sorry to wake you up. You're okay. Hi. I know you're sticking your little tongue out, huh? Bandita believes in you. Bandita believes in everyone. She's nothing if not optimistic, that dog. It's her main thing in life. I think, I'm not sure what a mental health professional would advise you to do to work through this, but I like thinking about, okay, what do I actually want from a relationship? What values do I really have besides just purity? So there is a tool you can use. I don't know, like I got this from somebody in the mental health field. I don't know like if this is freely accessible online, but you can look for relationship vision questions. And I have, this isn't me trying to sell something to you, but I'm just telling you where it is. I have a kinky version of this that I made that's on my Patreon for patrons. And it's a list of, in my case, 30 questions that you can go through, and it helps you really think about what you want from a relationship. And the reason why I'm recommending you do something like this is it asks you things like, in the vanilla version, like what does love mean to you, right? I'm gonna try and pull up like some of the other questions from it just to have like a really solid point of reference here. Give me a second here. I got a bookmarked in here somewhere. Oh, here we go. For example, right? Like, how do you relate? This is like you're answering this from the perspective of like, what would you want in your ideal relationship? You know, like how do you relate to each other? How do you play with each other? Let me see. How do you relate to household responsibilities? How do you relate to money? What is the role of children in your life? You know, how do you relate to mutual friends? What is your relationship structure? Does that include power exchange? Well, that's the how does that include power exchange? That's my inclusion. I added that part. You know, how do you handle conflict, right? That kind of thing, where you're thinking about what do you actually want from a relationship, or like what do you value, right? And that could be security, stability, passion, creativity, generosity, kindness. There's like a value card sort you can do. If you just Google value card sort, you should be able to find copies of it. But it's essentially a card game in a way you can go through where you have to pick out your most important to least important values, and that really helps you understand what you want. And by going through this and defining things like, what does love mean to you? How do you relate to a partner? You know, how do you relate to sex? What does your sex life look like? You can have a very clear understanding of what you want from a relationship separate from purity. And then by looking at that, I think you can reassure yourself that you can obtain these things without purity. That purity is not the barometer for making these things happen or not. These are your new cornerstones for what makes a healthy relationship, right? How you handle conflict, how do you talk to each other, those sorts of things. Do you have similar life goals and similar values, as opposed to just this nebulous concept of like religious purity? I think it'll give you a new waypoint to point towards, because I feel like one of the issues for a lot of people with like letting go of the idea of purity is because if you grew up in a religious setting, for most of us, we're not given any other things to point towards. And this isn't my upbringing in religion, but it's true for a lot of people. Your only value, either in and of yourself or from other people that you might be in a relationship. And the predominant thing that matters is not compatibility, shared hobbies, shared interests, anything like that at all. The ability to carry on a polite conversation together. None of that matters half as much as somebody being pure. And so when you get rid of that pillar of purity, it can leave you feeling without a path. It can leave you feeling like you don't, like, if that's not there, then it's complete chaos and there's no reason to not date anyone ever, because what else should you even care about? And so giving yourself a new thing to point towards, I think, is a really vital step too. Oh, thank you. Just saying hi. Almost never get to see your stream live. Been watching the recording for the last months. Always love listening to your streams. Thank you so much. I am glad that you enjoy it. Yeah, I appreciate that. Wow, this is life-changing advice. I mean, I hope you're being serious about that, and I'm glad that it is, because I think, like, I was so floored when I had somebody ask me, like, what does love mean to you? And I was like, what does love mean to me? I don't know. I haven't had to, like, to articulate that to another human being. No point of reference for that. So I really enjoyed that. I think that's a really good thing to have on your radar for trying to find a new association. And it might also, as you meet more people, I think one other exercise you could do here is you can think about people you know that offer those feelings of comfort and stability and peace for you that you know aren't pure. Right? You can say, hey, like, we're really good friends with Janice, and we like being around Janice, right? She's comfortable, easy to talk to, laughs a lot, fun to be around, but she's had boyfriends before. She's not pure, but she is still comfortable, right? She's easy to be around. So I think just kind of giving your brain information to slowly chip away and dismantle at that idea of, like, purity being a core sign of this. If you can give your brain concrete things that disprove your previous assumption, I think it makes life a lot easier to deal with. But ultimately, really, I think, especially working through purity culture and all of that stuff with your sexuality, a lot of people benefit a lot from the help of a professional. There's no shame in that at all. So hopefully that gave you all some food for that. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like, the purity overriding everything else is just, like, it's so predominant. Like, especially, like, for me, at least, kind of the messaging that was, like, the most important thing about, like, my value as, like, a future spouse or a partner or something was, like, how pure I am. Like, no, thank you. Okay, let's see. Let's get to some more questions. Yeah, so far the technology, it's been on its best behavior, I'd say. Oh yeah, military spouse life. That's a tough one. What are some types of aftercare that gives you red flags? Oh, that's a new angle I hadn't thought of. That's a great question. Okay, so I will say usually that the topics in the live stream title to start with are, like, rough ideas that we might end up talking about. Usually we end up going in a completely different direction, but I'm glad to get a question about aftercare and, like, red flags. So I just taught a class on aftercare. I was very nervous to teach it, and I, like, I was up all day, like, changing the slideshow and, like, adding stuff, and, like, I hadn't taught, like, an online class for quite a while, and I was like, oh, I hope it was okay. And this is, like, a new class for me too, so I hadn't even like really practiced it, like, a full run through before. But I think it was okay. I think I have lots of notes for improving it in the future. But that's kind of like why aftercare is on my brain. Is I think sort of aftercare is usually talked about in sort of a, like, eat chocolate and ice cream and watch movies in a blanket fort, and, like, we either don't really know why that works, or we think that because we don't like that, we must be doing something wrong. And so the point of my class is, like, kind of giving you the tool set to understand what makes certain aftercare things effective, and giving you building blocks to be able to select kind of different tools that will help you emotionally regulate, feel stable, get into a rest and recovery place to be able to have less drop, less negative experiences, not just from the perspective of like a bottom or a submissive, but also as a top, as a switch, as a dom, as a vanilla person that has to deal with like crappy life things occasionally. Like a lot of us could use aftercare on a Friday night after a bad week at work. So like it's a common thing. But anyways, for red flags for aftercare, I feel like for me, because red flags are so individual, I think it's very hard to make universal statements about this is always a red flag. But for me, I feel like aftercare red flags would be in general making assumptions about aftercare, like assuming it's going to happen without talking about it first, or assuming certain things will happen as like, this always happens as part of aftercare, so I shouldn't even have to mention it. No, you do. Sorry, I know people whose aftercare is a water bottle and a cigarette break. I know people whose aftercare is making a blanket fort and then watching cartoons for 2 hours. I know people whose aftercare is just sleeping. Like, everyone I know is so different with their aftercare, both from scene to scene, partner to partner, all of that stuff. But especially when people assume anything sexual about aftercare, it makes me go, we're not on the same page. Something has happened. We've crossed some wires. I don't know what's happening here. And for me, I have not, thankfully, personally experienced this. I've experienced this with like romantic partners that I do kink with, but not with like kinky people I know that I play with. Like, it's the other way around. And I've definitely had people assume like, oh, well, like, but first we do the kink and then you do this with my genitals. And it's like, no, I don't. You can do that with your genitals. I'm going to be cuddling my dog and taking a nap at home. Bye. Like I've definitely had people assume that. So for me, a red flag is like assuming things are sexual because, I mean, you can never really assume malicious intent without further information, but I certainly get worried that a good portion of the reason why people will do that is because they think if they ask for it up front and say they want that, they won't get it. And so they try to get their foot in the door by doing a kink scene. They think, and sometimes they are successful at doing this, sadly, they will think that, if they, sorry, I'm trying to move my dog, like, camera around. I got kind of like off center here. And now it doesn't want to go back to where it was. Whatever, I'll deal with it later. Like, they think that they can kind of backdoor their way into it by getting somebody into Subspace and, they kind of making them into jelly because they did a scene together and then be able to go, hey, now my turn. Now I get what I want. Please touch my genitals. And it's like, you can't do that. You can't do that. No. Oh my god. And aftercare I thought was bad, but actually good. She peed on my pillow and, oh my god, and your face rested in it. I mean, is that aftercare or just a different scene happening? I mean, I guess I know people whose aftercare is like cleaning up afterwards, so, is that service submission or is it aftercare? To each their own. But yeah, I am, definitely trying to turn anything into a sex thing afterwards. That's like a really, really big red flag. And then anytime you make assumptions, like if you just assume, well, I shouldn't have to tell you that's what I want. You should just know that, of course, I'm going to want you to spend the night with me, stay at my place, watch a movie with me, feed me gummy worms, whatever, on and on down the list. No, you can't assume any of that. Sorry, Tumblr and then TikTok has misled you. And I think, honestly, like, I guess maybe people that repeat the line of, like, no aftercare is abuse, like, uncritically, I think that usually makes me go, okay, let's investigate that a little bit more, because there are, if you have asked for something, if you are doing a scene under the pretense, under the knowledge, the agreement that you will be able to have aftercare, and then your partner skips out on you and says, bye, never mind, and then just like runs away to avoid having to have that responsibility or obligation to you, yeah, that's bad. Don't do that. No, that's on them. That is a bad thing to do. However, if you don't say anything at all and you just expect that, aftercare me, right? You go, aftercare me. It's time for my aftercare. Why isn't it happening? Hello, you owe me. This is my thing now. Especially when it's a submissive that is expecting aftercare from their dominant partner without having to say anything first. It's like, you don't know what your partner needs for aftercare, Miss Ma'am. Like, you don't know. Like maybe your partner's aftercare is they go and hang out in a quiet, dark room for 20 minutes and meditate. And maybe they don't want to or are not able to cuddle you and feed you gummy worms because they got to do their own routine. And like, you would have known that if you would have asked. And so just anything that gets close to like, you shouldn't have to say anything, they should just know. I don't like that. Those are my red flags personally. But in terms of like specific activities, as long as it's not springing it on somebody, I genuinely don't care what your aftercare routine is. It could be getting a cigarette. It could be going to a diner, taking a nap, watching a movie, eating ice cream, going for a walk or a jog, taking a bath, cuddling your cats at home. None of it is either surprising to me or weird or unusual. It's all like, yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. My aftercare is preferring a fruit and cheese board and tea for me and my dom. It gives me a bit of alone time and still lets us connect after the scene. That is a beautiful and adorable idea. That sounds delightful. I love that. I love that. I'm going to steal that idea. Fruit and cheese board. Yeah, but as far as like types of aftercare that give me red flags, I guess anyone does anything sexual and then like, I guess, like, okay, if the one thing that would even maybe kind of approach this, I think, would be people that immediately, like, as soon as the scene is done, they want to debrief the entire scene top to bottom. Like, you're just done playing, you wrapped up 2 minutes ago, you've just finished putting away the floggers into your flogger carrying case, and now they're like, okay, let's talk about the scene. And then they want to talk about the scene, and they want to go through everything in detail. And it's like, when you see a movie review, and it's like, the Star Wars movie was like 2 hours, but then the review was 4, where you end up like debriefing immediately afterwards. Well, I guess to sort of maybe flesh out the analogy more. It's like if you had a Star Wars movie that just came out that day, and then it's 2 hours long, and then 6 hours later, there's a 4-hour long YouTube review of it. Like as soon as you're done with the scene, they want to be able to nitpick every single little tiny thing, and they want to go through with a little magnifying glass, and like a little pair of tweezers, and like look at everything and go, that was wrong, we could have done this better. Yeah, I haven't had that happen to me personally, but I feel like if somebody is that obsessive about like perfecting the scene experience, it's like, we gotta give it some room to breathe. I feel like a couple minutes at least, right? Like I think if you're just rushing into analyzing what happened, you're not fully experiencing what happened and processing it and integrating it if you're rushing into analysis so quickly. And I feel like this is something, again, I haven't experienced this, but I imagine this would be something that would probably be more likely to happen with people that are more analytically minded, that aren't really comfortable sitting in emotional spaces too much. Like they gotta go right into the analysis of it very quickly. Mm-hmm. All right, well, I think that probably about answers that. You can't give the mister too much control over my thoughts, though. It's not like he knows how to bake German chocolate cake. Listen, yeah, that's true. Listen, the reason why you can't completely mind control me isn't because that would be like immoral or anything. It would be because suddenly I'm gonna lose the instructions in my brain for how to make perfect cinnamon rolls at home. Which, by the way, I made cinnamon rolls last night. For people who are on the live stream, I talked about the cinnamon rolls that I wanted to make not working out, and I will have you know that when I went downstairs after the stream was done, I was pleasantly surprised by the fact that my dough did actually prove, and it did actually, like, so normally with dough, if you're making like a yeasted enriched dough, you have to rest the dough in a warm place and then it'll expand, and then that's how the whole thing works. And because that's just how you make it. That's science. I don't know. And I thought that my yeast didn't fully activate, and so I didn't think it was going to prove. And I think if anything, I overproved it because I left it for 2 hours instead of an hour, so my bad. And yeah, so I proved it, and then I made cinnamon rolls, and I think I have never made them at home before, so I didn't really know what to expect. I think it turned out pretty good, but I have notes for next time. But I didn't immediately debrief after my cinnamon roll making experience. I didn't immediately start to analyze it, but I have ideas for next time. Lovely to see you. I have to head up and may catch some of the stream. Happy Friday, and may the tech gods be with you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So far, they have been. Thank you, tech gods. I feel bad for Fido because he looks delicious. I'm gonna eat him. Poor Fido. Poor Fido. Is Houndour a dog Pokemon? I always thought Houndour was like, oh, I guess it's sort of a Doberman, isn't it? I always thought about it more like just like a hellhound as opposed to like a pet, like fluffy dog. And then Growlithe is like a tiger, so I didn't even think about that. It's sort of like dog-like, I guess, because they're used by the police, the police officers. Folsom was last weekend. It was my first kink event in months. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. Probably a big experience as well, especially if you haven't been before. Lost my spot in the chat here for a second. Great, perfect. Just enjoyed going to Folsom on Sunday. Had a great time. Got a flogging from the Society of Janus, or Janice probably. A long time goal of mine. Well, I am so glad you got to experience that. I hope that you enjoyed it. Yeah, she loves snuggling under her bed wall. That is one of her favorite things. She loves anything that gets, if she can rest her chin on it like this is what she likes to do. She likes to be able to do this with her chin, which, like, same. I get it. That's what she looks for in a bed, and I try to find that for her. I mean, at my school, they did not lie about getting out of undergrad classes with those. The school I went to, I got out of a bunch of classes because of my AP credits. I got out of a ton, and also because of my ACT scores. I got out of a lot of classes that way. But like different schools will accept different AP credits, so it totally depends on where you end up going, which is like, you know, it helped me graduate early. Had to pay less in tuition that way, so it made my life easier. But yeah, it's not a given for sure. Is there a way to access the Aftercare class you did recently if you weren't able to attend live? Ben also may have missed any details. Yeah, I posted about it on Twitter and on the YouTube community tab. If you want to, you can email the education coordinator. They should have their email somewhere on the Shebop website if you want to be able to buy a copy of the recording. I can't promise you will be able to do that, but if you want to see a recording of the Aftercare class that I did, I will just see if they have the any emails on there. Because that would be, like, if I see a bunch of people want to buy a copy of the class because they missed it, that might be... They're just education at Shebop the shop. Please don't spam them. They're good people. But if you wanted to see that Aftercare class that I mentioned, you can email education@sheboptheshop.com. And they will be able to tell you whether or not you can buy a copy of the class if you want it. Because I don't know, that's like all of the recording, the invites, all of that stuff is through them. I just show up and teach the class, and I like make the materials and everything. So that's not my forte. Don't know what goes on there. But I normally, for my own classes, if I'm teaching on my own, I do I have copies available for recordings, but I don't have control over this one. Super chat here. Do you have any suggestions for those of us that do not have a partner for aftercare? Thank you so much for all that you do to empower us. Enjoy the moon. Oh, is it the full moon today? Or are we just enjoying the moon no matter what state it's in? I enjoy the moon no matter what. But no, I think that's a great question. So I am a really big believer in solo aftercare and like having a solid routine for it. And one of the things that I talked about in the class that I did is I gave some like concrete examples of like kind of bringing in a bunch of ideas together. And generally really beneficial aftercare for getting into that rest, relaxation, or recovery state and helping you emotionally regulate, especially after a more emotionally intense scene. You want to incorporate a lot of senses and practice mindfulness and awareness of the actions that you're doing. So like a really great, like kind of seasonal solo aftercare activity might be, you know, make the next day making yourself a big mug of hot chocolate or tea or coffee, you know, putting it in a travel thermos and then going on a walk in the woods and letting the, you know, bundling up to stay warm or letting the cool air hit your face. And then as you're walking around, you know, you're mindfully paying attention to your gait, you're focusing on your breath, you're doing that deep diaphragmatic breathing, you know, you're trying to let your exhales be longer than your inhales, you're trying to fully expand throughout your whole rib cage, your whole chest, then push it down through your pelvis, fully exhale all of the breath very slowly, and then slowly breathe back in and just repeat that. Just fully breathing with your whole chest cavity as much as possible, but being mindfully aware as you're walking, all the sensations you're experiencing, the bird song, the crunch of the leaves, the breeze in your hair, the feeling of holding the mug in your hand, and paying attention to all of that. Literally stopping and smelling the roses is one example that I gave, right? Stopping and smelling the roses and, you know, feeling the tree bark or picking up a leaf on the ground, just like finding that simple, genuine enjoyment of being out there in nature. In fact, there are whole therapy modalities now that are becoming popularized that are based in doing like what's called walk and talk therapy, where you are walking and doing talk therapy while also being in nature. And this is, for some people, proven to be very beneficial because of that physical connection. The kinesthetic activity of doing the walking helps them like through the therapeutic process. But doing all of that, I think, can be very regulating versus like if you're just like, I'm gonna go on a walk, and then you like put your headphones in, you play a podcast, you stare at the ground the whole time and like daydream about the scene you just had. Like you're not present in the activity you're doing. And like that can be relaxing for different reasons. It's relaxing because it's distracting you from your thoughts. But being like fully mindful and being present in the moment, I think tends to be very regulating and very helpful for a lot of people. So a lot of my aftercare tips are very much based in like regulation and like getting your sympathetic nervous system to like calm down a little bit, get your parasympathetic nervous system and your vagus nerve to come online and be like, all right, let's chill out, let's relax. And having a little, you know, whole grain Nutribar before, is that what they're called? Nutri-Grain bars? Yeah, I haven't had one of those in like 15 years. Having like a whole grain, you know, Nutri-Grain bar, or like, you know, like a piece of whole wheat toast or something, or like pasta, having sort of a light, but have grain and like fiber dense food, because fiber is also very good for, you know, easing and slowing down your digestion, and then that sends a signal to your vagus nerve and then to your brain to like slow down. And, you know, walking can also aid in the digestion process. But yeah, it's like usually for solo aftercare stuff, that's what I tend to focus on. And then also engaging at home in things that are comfortable for you, right? Taking a warm bath, being cuddled up in a warm blanket, you know, saying positive affirmating? That's not a word. Affirmating. English. That sounds like it could be a word though. You know, saying affirming things, watching a comforting show too. But like, I feel like lots of people kind of intuitively know that. One, they understand the comfort part of like, do things that make you feel good and are easy. But I think sort of taking that a level deeper than just like relaxing, there's ways to kind of ease your brain to be able to relax even better when you come home from that walk, having the physical activity, having that mental refocusing, and then being able to really relax into that TV show or whatever else it is. On some breathing exercises, the exhale, inhale, and holds are the same length. Yes, that's square breathing, generally speaking. Like there's lots of, for diaphragmatic breathing, generally you want the exhales to be longer than the inhales. But like the reason why I advocate for diaphragmatic breathing in that case, as opposed to maybe other techniques, as like a core example of how to do it, is your diaphragm and your vagus nerve are directly linked. And so that's like another sort of feedback mechanism for your nervous system, which is very helpful to have. But like really any kind of focused breathing, that could be square breathing, it could be just focusing on your exhales, it could be focusing on the sensation of the breath through your mouth and through your nose, it could be visualizing, you know, filling up your lungs and like pulling out all the negative energy, the smoke turning gray and then black, and then exhaling it, and the smoke turns white as it leaves, and when you inhale, it turns white, it gathers up all the negative energy, and it exhales through you, or goes through you when you exhale or whatever. Like there's so many different activities and ways to engage with breath in a way that can be helpful and relaxing for your nervous system. But like diaphragmatic breathing is sort of like the classic example of how to do that. So that's usually what I stick with. So long answer there. Hopefully that gave you some tools to think about and work with on that one. But I found that personally to be very helpful just for like life aftercare. Kink aftercare definitely too. And the class I gave wasn't really necessarily just about kink aftercare, so we didn't really talk too much about like, you know, taking care of wounds or first aid or things like that, because that wasn't really the focus of the class, though I may add in, you know, sort of a slide about that at some point maybe. Which rope has the best mix of soluble and insoluble fiber? Probably hemp. Probably hemp if I had to pick one. Ooh, do you think aftercare can/should be adopted or adapted around attachment styles? Yes. I mean, I really feel like attachment styles kind of inform everything, so it's a little bit hard to be like, no, don't adapt them to attachment styles. I think being aware of your attachment styles can make it easier for you to understand why you have certain reactions or needs with a partner, right? Like if you're very anxiously attached, you're probably not gonna have a super positive reaction to your partner being like, I need to be alone for 20 minutes in a dark room by myself and listening to this one album that relaxes me. You're gonna be like, why don't you want to spend time with me? Do you hate me now? Why am I not good enough? We just did a scene together. You used me. And then like spiraling and panicking. So like, good to understand what's going on there. Or likewise, if you have an avoidant attachment style and your style is to be like, peace, and then just like leaving and never talking to the person again after a scene, and that's your aftercare. So maybe we're talking about that. And then obviously, right, we have like anxious avoidant attachment disorder, which is, there's another, we're using a different term for that now, aren't we? It's not anxious avoidant. What the frick is that? What is the other one called? Because obviously also there's like secure attachment too. Is it disorganized? Is everyone with I think it's just called disorganized now. Or, yeah, because there's secure, anxious, preoccupied, dismissive avoidant, and fearful avoidant. So like fearful avoidant or disorganized, those disordered attachment styles, then you're sort of like, I both want to be close and far away. If you get close, I'm going to pull away. But if you go away, I'm going to go towards you, and then I'm going to chase you, and I'm like, it's very difficult to work with. So yes, I do think that aftercare should be adapted to attachment styles. And maybe that's actually a really good idea to like include that in my class notes for next time, maybe talking about attachment styles. I only had an hour and a half for that version of the class, and normally I teach in a 2-hour long format, so I think if I can do a longer version of this class, I can definitely include a little bit of attachment styles in there, because yeah, especially when it's on a relational level, understanding attachment styles is, and like protest behavior and things like that, is also very important for like being like, why does my partner act like this after a scene? Why do they always want to run away? Why do they always want to text me for 4 hours as I'm trying to drive home? Like, yeah, absolutely. So yes, as far as like, especially if trying to avoid getting overly attached due to circumstance. Overly attached. I mean, that is such, I guess it's sort of like, that's so subjective. Like, what does it mean to get overly attached? I guess that sort of means like more attached than you personally want to be. If that's what you're trying to avoid, for me, not everyone is like this. I would probably recommend avoiding like direct physical cuddly aftercare. You know, when you're getting into like hair stroking, holding hands, cuddling, whatever else, I would stick to maybe more like side by side aftercare, right? Like you could both take a walk together, right? But not hold hands. You can just like chat like friends. There's ways to create bonding and trust in the relationship without like physical, like romantic attachment maybe developing where you don't want it to or don't want to be sending those signals. So good question though. It's definitely a very good one. I'm not really sure, like on top of my head here, like kind of what to recommend, like for how to make certain things different for different attachment styles. I think it's mostly being aware of what they are, communicating to your partner how that affects what you need. And like I think ultimately for a lot of people we want to be able to move into more secure attachment styles, but I think just what's more important is not like the pie in the sky dream of like someday I'll have perfectly secure attachment to all people all the time, but you know, recognizing where you're at currently and how that affects your needs and why your needs are the way that they are. Not that you should have to justify your aftercare needs, like, oh, I'm so sorry, like I'm avoidant, I have avoidant attachment issues, and so I need to be alone, I'm so sorry. Like if the instinct is to be overly apologetic for your own needs, resist the urge. It should be okay for you to want to go and do whatever you need to do within reason, right? Like if your aftercare is like stealing candy bars, is that really aftercare? Probably not, right? So like within reason, you know? Yeah, just like don't hyperfixate. All right, next question. Something about cheese? Oh, that's not what's happening here. I was there, but I left around 3 o'clock when it was getting too crowded. Yep, I want to say I would normally get there about 10 and then stay until 3. Oh, honey. Oh, little girl. Hi, what was that? I heard you. What was that? Sorry for interrupting. Sorry. She just looked at me like, what do you have a problem with, lady? Oh, gosh. Yeah, I'm an hour and a half from SF. Very, yeah, they close off the streets. Yeah, exactly. I hear the kink community is frowned upon because of misunderstanding. Me too. I mean, if anything, it's not even just that I hate it because it's misunderstood. Like, I get it if somebody's like, I don't know what that kink thing is all about. It seems kind of weird. I don't get it. Sorry, I'm going to turn on the light a little bit. I'm going to get some lighting going in here. Oh, that's better. That's better. Shoot, what was I saying? I get it when things are just like, oh, well, that's not for me. It's not my thing. I don't understand it because it's not my thing. And it's one thing separate from that when it's painting the LGBT community with a negative broad brush because look at the freaks on display at the freak show, even though this is totally a different event at a different time of year, and we're lying to make things seem worse than they really are because we just hate people that act different. That's what I dislike, is when it's not just like a mere misunderstanding, they just haven't interacted with it before, but hatred or ignorance to the point of like at least not caring if somebody is harmed. That's what really bothers me. How often do you see trans or gender nonconforming people at kink events? I want to investigate the local scene, but I'm worried about being the only trans woman there and not being treated the way that I want to be treated. Well, I can tell you right now, there are many trans women in this chat currently at this present moment. I'm sure either have answered this question or would be happy to answer that question for you. I'm not a trans woman, so I can't say that, how that reality is. I can say from my experience, given I have done BDSM mostly on the West Coast, more liberal areas where being trans or gender nonconforming is much more openly accepted, at least in most places. And I see trans or gender nonconforming people at every single event I go to. At munches, at classes, at parties, at whatever it is, doesn't matter. across the gamut from really small events to very big ones. How many people you see like that is variable. I certainly know a lot of people that I think the average person would perceive as being cis that are not. That's also very common in the kink community, is you will perceive somebody as, oh, it's just another white male dom. And then you talk to them and you realize they're very much just not them at all. Like they actually use she, her pronouns, or they use they, them pronouns, and they're actually non-binary. And you have no idea just looking at them, because a lot of them, the kink community is the place where they can safely explore, gender and using new pronouns and their mode of address and their actual physical dress sometimes. And in their everyday life and career or family, they can't do that. And so they do it in kink. So even then, just because you're not seeing other visible, like, people coded that you would assume are gender nonconforming or whatever, doesn't mean that they're not there. So that's also another big thing too, is lots of people are perceived as being cis but are actually not. So yeah. I live in the Bible Belt, and there's quite a lot of trans women in my local community. I mean, it's a thing for sure. I've known way more like non-binary or agender or trans women in the scene. I've met some people that are, as they would describe themselves, assigned female at birth, but are like mask of center now, but AFAB. Like they were AFAB, but now they're mask of center, but now they're also non-binary. I know very few like binary trans men in the kink scene. That would be like the one thing where I feel like there's a level of under-inclusion and under-representation. I don't really know why that is, but I don't know very many like binary trans men in the scene. I know lots of people that are like mask, non-binary, like sort of, the whole different flavors outside of just that one very specific way of being it. But certainly lots of trans women and other trans and non-binary folks. So yeah, they're everywhere, but in a good way. I'm in North Carolina, and there are trans folks at every slosh or munch I go to, pretty much. Lots of trans folks out and proud at Folsom this past weekend. Oh, I am sure about that. I am very, very sure. I see lots of trans folks, but I live in Brooklyn and kinky/queer spaces. I feel like I might be a bit unbalanced. I mean, like, listen, if it's in New York and in the Bible, North Carolina and in the Bible Belt, I know for sure, when I've gone to events, like bigger conferences, it doesn't matter where I've been to, honestly. Like, I've gone all over the country at this point, and there's always trans people. Actually, in fact, trans people tend to be the organizers a lot of times. Like, there are a lot of people that are trans and gender nonconforming that are organizers in the kink scene. So, it's also maybe worth looking into that, too. Like, if you're worried about being the only one, if you look for long enough, I guarantee you will find somebody who is a trans woman or a non-binary person organizing an event in your local kink scene if you look far enough and wide enough. Apparently Philadelphia is where the binary trans men are. Is this weird to say that Philadelphia is like is coded for that? Like, you tell me that and I'm like, that seems like the kind of place where there would be trans men. Like, just seems like the kind of place I would like expect them to hang out. I don't know. Like that in Boston? I don't know why. I can't tell you why that is. That is a completely unsubstantiated, probably terrible stereotype in my head. But it makes sense. I'm like, yeah, no, that makes sense. This is so good to hear. I'm a binary and in Alabama. I've been anxious that I'll never be what someone wants to play with. LOL. I mean, finding a good partner is like, that's always a different question. Because, yeah, that can be difficult. I don't know about Alabama. I know in Atlanta, there is a very, very big scene there. But I don't know where in Alabama you are, how close Atlanta would be for you to get to, if that would be like a tenable drive for you to go to events. But Atlanta, for sure, I know has a very big scene. Binary trans men here. There's tons of us bootblacking for some reason. Listen, that is the place. That is definitely a thing for sure. Honestly, I just trans and non-binary people in general. I feel like every bootblack I know is trans and non-binary, and I kind of love that. But also, I'm like, I really want to understand how that's like this, because it is like on paper you're like, how would that, what's the correlation there? I would love to be able to have a survey of like what draws you to this, because yeah, it does seem a little bit like random when you just think about it. I do not answer all questions. I try to get to all of them. If we're kind of on a current subject, I keep up with that one, and then when I feel like it's a good place to move on, we'll move on to the next question. I have yet to meet another trans woman here that isn't kinky, lol. I'm in East Wisconsin. Could just be who I personally attract, though. Yeah, definitely. Definitely a thing. All right, let's get on to another question. But love all the feedback, for sure. Absolutely. Yep, the kink community is a cross-section of the general public, so most people are straight, but overall I'd say the kink community tends to be more welcoming to outcasts because we all are. I mean, that's kind of like partly true. I would say that, you know, you will see all different types of people in the scene. I would say you get a more concentrated dose of minority groups than what you would typically get in your local community, like in everyday life that you would typically see, right? Like, I certainly know in the kink scene that I've been a part of in different cities, I always know more people and see more people that are trans, non-binary, LGBT, or POC as well, that are in the kink scene as opposed to kind of like random people at a grocery store. But that being said, you will see everyone of all different types, all different ages, all different body types, all different ways of expression, as you would see in your local community, more or less. But maybe a more concentrated version of some aspects occasionally. This year the looky-loos weren't too bad, and every person asked for consent for pics. Unless the ones that are really sneaky. But that's good generally. Just like, there's somebody out there who wore a ghillie suit that was like dodging and rolling, taking sneaky pictures. Every year there's one. Every year. What does my shirt say? It says Mary Wyatt, which is, I really love this shirt. It's very cute. This is like, I'm gonna wear this for like Halloween stuff. Mary Wyatt is a made in London, like small business, like small, I don't know if they call it like, it's not limited edition prints, but they do like small limited run, locally made, like goth and alternative stuff. And this is like, I really love this design. I think they may be sold out of it currently, but it's Mary Wyatt, so, or I guess it would be Mary Wyatt the other way. But I wear a lot of stuff from them, and they make, it's very good quality clothing. I ordered a different version of this shirt in a different print last year, and it was tiny. The extra small was like baby sized. Like, I could not get my neck through it. It was so small, and I have a small neck, okay? Like, I know what my precise neck measurement is because of wearing collars, and so like, I know that my neck is smaller than average, and I could not get my head through it, even though the rest of it probably would have fit okay. And I was like, oh. So I'm glad they seem to have done some retooling on the sizing, because this is just, well, they don't have extra small usually. Usually they have 6, 8, 10, like UK sizing. But I think this is either a 6 or an 8, and it fits really well. I feel like being trans or queer makes you look inside yourself a bit more. Sometimes when people realize they're trans, bi, queer, etc., they also realize they're into kinky stuff. Yeah, that's definitely true. I think a lot of it is introspection. And I think also part of it is that the kink community, because it's already like an alternative place, we tend to be more welcoming, and it's a good place to find found family and not like just have to deal with your crappy religious weird uncle who thinks that you're dealing with a phase, you know, at the very least. Sometimes they're worse than that. Sometimes they're better, but not usually. And it can be a really good place to find like-minded people that are welcoming, and like, if you're in a place where everyone is fisting each other, it's a little bit hard to be judgmental about somebody wearing a skirt, you know? Like, it's a little bit like, why is that a problem exactly? Why do we draw the line there? I tried to send a super chat and it's not working. Oh, that's weird. I tried a few times. So sorry it suddenly goes through his hands. Well, I'll let you know if it happens. I saw one from you earlier, so I don't know. I think I answered that one earlier. But if I didn't, I will look for it. Because I think I can just look and see. I saw your first one that was a thank you for the asexual vid, but if you send something else after that, I haven't gotten it yet, but I will keep an eye out for it just in case. It could also be like a credit card thing, maybe? I don't know. I wonder about that. A girl slid into my DMs. She told me she is a sub. How can I keep things spicy? Chipotle mayo. Thank you. I'll be here all week. These are the jokes, people, because you gotta keep it spicy, because she's a sub, because she's like a sandwich. You guys get it? Is it funny? Am I funny yet? I entertained myself. I'm good. Listen, these are the jokes, people. No, work with me, people. If somebody wants to keep it spicy and they say they're submissive, I mean, my brain kind of goes to one of those memes where it's like, you're a good girl. Wait, what? I really respect you. What do you mean? And you're going to do all your homework, right? And just like that, like over positive reinforcement, that might not work for everyone. I mean, the real answer here is if you want to keep things spicy, you got to know what kind of sub she is and what she wants out of the interaction. My experience dating people that genuinely, as, you know, dominant people, you know, people that want to do kink, like for realsies, they will often run into people that they'll open up a DM on like a social media thing or like on a dating app, and they will like, they'll instantly just like want to be fully submissive and like start calling you daddy, and they want to be virtually collared, and like they want to role play all day every day, and they're super bratty, and so they want rules but don't pay attention to them, but don't really understand how to brat in a healthier way, so they don't have any other options for how to behave differently, and like it's a whole hot mess. And so there's lots of people that will say I'm a submissive and then just go, I'm a submissive, do me now, please make me act submissive, fulfill all my fantasies for me. And the easiest way to weed out people that have more of that mentality, where they're not actually really into doing kink for real, they want to have free, hot role play, is to ask them what they want. Say, okay, great, I'm curious about exploring that. What does being a submissive mean to you? And just wait. Can they tell you why they enjoy being submissive? Can they tell you what they enjoy about being a submissive? Can they tell you about their previous experience with it, if any? Can they tell you if they haven't had any experience yet? Can they tell you what drew them to it? Can they, let me see, what else? You know, like, can they tell you what their kinks are? Can they tell you what they have for goals in a future relationship? Like, somebody that is serious about kink will usually be able to answer pretty much all of these questions, no problem. But if they are somebody that's not actually that serious about kink, and they just want to, you know, have their little fun experiences and that's it, and they don't, like, they just want to play around in DMs and act bratty, you know, they're not really going to be able to substantiate that. So before you worry about keeping it spicy with them, maybe worry about did not mean mayo from Chipotle. I meant mayonnaise. That's Chipotle flavor because it's spicy. But you're forgiven. You're forgiven. Oh, sorry, microphone. Forgive me, microphone. But yeah, you don't have to worry about impressing them. They have to prove to you first that they're really a submissive. So like, before you get worried about like, oh, someone's like a submissive fell in my DMs and what do I do? Like, make sure they're actually a submissive first. And then, yeah, then you'll actually like have material to work with. And then because they told you what they want, then you can use what they said they wanted to give them what they want. And then it's easy, and then you don't have to guess. Easy. See, simple. I have literally never had that fail. If I am talking to somebody and they're also into kink and they want to try that, I will have conversations with them about what they're into, and either we're just not into the same kinks, in which case we move on, or we're into the same kinks and it's a hot, fun time to talk about it, and it's like, ooh, can't wait to do this and try this. But I also am like talking to people on dating apps I intend to like meet in real life at some point. So my experience is a little bit different there. How do you rule out flakes? I found that submissive men interacting with femdoms have been the flakiest group I've ever interacted with. That is true for everyone I know that works with male submissives or are in the industry, right? pro doms, people that sell panties, fetish content, all of that stuff. If men, especially submissive men, are the main clientele, they want to extract as much free roleplay and content from you as possible. They want to drag things out as much as possible to stay in their comfortable little fantasy world and then not actually have to do anything in real life. So as far as weeding out flakes, if you want to be able to, if you're talking about in person, I mean, the easiest thing is to just be like, okay, great, let's meet up at a munch and talk. And if they're not willing to do that, great, you've wasted 10 seconds of your life sending one message. I think a lot of people on dating apps have gone through this experience where, not just for kink reasons, but in general, right? They'll spend like forever texting with somebody. And then, oh, there's Morgan's. There's Morgan's little chat. I'm struggling with Subspace. Not getting there, but staying out of it when not... oh, I see. The problem isn't not getting there, but staying out of it when it's not appropriate. Like just attending an event. My brain's like a toddler that found the cookie jar. Oh no, I had to fight the damn shit back. Oh, that's probably why it took a issue with your super chats if there was a swear word in it. Back with a 2x4. On the one hand, that's like a very funny and apt description, but also it's like, I imagine that's very distressing. So yes, if you want to weed out flakes, if you're meeting them in person, just like get to meeting them in person as fast as possible. Most people that are on dating apps at some point, they get to a point where they're like, all right, I don't want to text you for 6 months and then never actually meet. Like, let's make this happen. And that's a good way to weed people out. If you're online, I think maybe escalating to a voice chat, a video call, like more quickly than you normally would, and trying to ask for that sooner is probably another way to weed out flakes, right? I mean, like, and honestly, like, if you're looking kind of more seriously for, like, a partner, most femdoms I know, they have a website, they have a fucking form, and step number 1, which eliminates, like, 90% of people, is successfully filling out a very simple piece of paperwork. Literally just, like, who you are, what you're about, what you want to do, why you're contacting me. Literally could not be simpler. Could finish it in 10 minutes or less if you really didn't have the time. And a lot of people will just like fill out one thing and then say, please mistress, and then that's it. And it's like, oh, well, you didn't fill it out, so spam bin, you know? So maybe having some kind of like disqualifying short like Google form application maybe could be a good place to start, just to make sure that somebody is going to put in at least enough effort and is willing to be that vulnerable with you. I think a lot of male submissives, because of the gateway that many of them experience into kink is through porn, a lot of them are very comfortable staying in like fantasy porn land. And this isn't to say that porn is bad or anything, but that like they want to stay there, and it's grueling to be like, all right, now let's go here. Like, let's go farther, please. They're like, oh, but I like they're like somebody who's gotten like almost hip deep in like the ocean, but they don't want to go past up into their torso. They're like, well, I put my feet in, I'm up to my knees, but I don't really want to go deeper than that. Like, it seems kind of scary. And like, you have to fucking drag them into like going deeper, because they're like, what they're currently doing is like 90% good enough. Like, they would want to explore it in person, but if the cost to them emotionally, mentally, time-wise is too high, they're not going to pay it, because jerking off to porn is basically just as good for a lot of them. So you got to make sure you have a higher barrier to entry where you can very quickly eliminate people that are not serious applicants. Absolutely. I mean, if you're talking to a professional, if it's a femdom who is a professional, this is their job, it is not in any way unusual for them to expect a deposit for their time. So yes, if it's one thing if it's like, you know, you're reserving a time in person or for a meetup or something, yeah, you're going to pay money for that. Sorry, it's called a deposit. It's a standard professional thing. Like, even getting your nails done these days, you have to pay a deposit if you're making an appointment in advance in case you don't show up, because it's their time, it's their money. And they're very highly skilled usually what they do. But if it's an online dominant who's like, you must Venmo me $100 before you can worship me, slave, that's a red flag. Because so that's some fucking random person in a DM being like, pay me, shut up. And that's not how that works. That's not how that works. Do you guys realize that, like, Findom isn't, like, as popular anymore? That had, like, a big moment on, like, social media there for a while. Then it just kind of went, bye. Like, that was fascinating how Findom just fucking fell through the floor. And, like, I never hear anyone talk about it anymore. But, yeah. And yeah, you got scammed. If somebody's DMing you and then says, pay me money, and then you pay them and then they block you, you got scammed. If somebody is DMing you, cold calling you, or you're talking to somebody over a dating app for a lifestyle reason, or on FetLife even, and they say, pay me before I talk to you, yeah, it's a scam. However, if you're going through somebody's personal website and you're, like, applying to do a session with them in person, a deposit is a routine part of that experience. But it's not really, I mean, to some point, I gotta be honest, it's kind of on you for not being able to figure out the difference between a professional's deposit for their work and somebody scamming you in a direct message, you know. If somebody says, fuck you, pay me, that's like, either that's your kink or it's not. I feel like that's super popular for that Vice documentary. I feel like it was popular before that. Like, it kind of was before the peak, and then it kind of went down after that, pretty shortly after. I said Findom. Findom becoming very popular, which I mean really is synonymous with femdom for a lot of people, but not entirely. Anyways, let me see. Oh, right. Sorry, totally got off on a tangent about that. Let's get to the other question from Morgan. Oh, why isn't it showing me it? Okay, so we were talking about subspace at inappropriate times and trying to stay out of subspace at inappropriate times. I think it is definitely, some people are very prone to suggestion, whether that be hypnotic suggestion or just like being suggestible and like kind of adapting like altered mental states very easily. Is there anything that like helps you not be in that state? Is there just like anything at all, like having caffeine or like, I mean, honestly, I feel like if you're very prone to subspace, you gotta kind of use the subspace against itself. Like, I would probably have something, I would try at least, like, having my partner very sternly tell me, like, you cannot go into subspace at this party. You will remain fully cognizant. You will remember details about what happened, and you will behave appropriately. And just like use the power of Dom voice to like scare your brain into being like, oh, okay, I will be fully cognizant and aware, and I will not be in subspace. And just like, hopefully that'll like, if your brain is that prone to suggestion, hopefully that by itself will like maybe help correct things a little bit there. I am going through questions currently that are super chats, and then I take time after that to go through and order different questions we haven't gotten to yet. But at this point, if you haven't asked it yet, I'm not going to be able to get through it. Yeah. The mayonnaise being an instrument is a SpongeBob meme, by the way, just for people who don't get the mayonnaise reference. It's been a while. I haven't had that meme in a while in the chat, but way to bring up mayonnaise, I suppose. But that would be probably what I would start doing. And then, let's see. I'm trying to think of like what environmental cues. I think maybe you have to start thinking about like what environmental cues are like getting you to go into subspace too easily. Like, is it the music? Is it the visuals? Is it just being in that space physically and feeling it? Is it the energy of it? And like, how can you mitigate your exposure to that and like maybe develop new associations with it? My brain just wants to roll over. I went with my friend for the last event and they kept an eye on me. I don't know. I do know it would upset them if I made bad choices. Yeah. I mean, at some point you just got to put yourself on a child leash and just be like, all right, we're staying here. Don't go over there. Don't talk to that man. He's dangerous. Like, stay here. Stay with me. Yeah, I think like if your friend can like kind of give you the stern orders to be like, all right, you can't stay in Subspace, stay with us. There's gonna be a pop quiz, pay attention. Like I feel like that would be like a helpful place maybe to start with, and then, I mean, like honestly, I think over time as things become less novel and they become more mundane, there's a pretty strong possibility that that by itself will like lessen the intensity of the spaciness you're experiencing. Um, but it's difficult to like have a guaranteed way to be like this will like fix you going into like subspace too much. um is there I almost so we don't really have any like good working theories that like precisely explain how this works, like why subspace happens. One theory that's quite popular is something called transient hyperfrontality, which is essentially, to make it very simplistic and completely neurobiologically inaccurate, it's shutting your brain off. I went to a class over the weekend, where somebody kept saying, shutting. It was actually during the week. It wasn't over the weekend. I kept using the phrase "it shuts your brain off," and I'm like, or it shuts the front of your brain off, and it's like parts of your brain don't literally go completely offline. That's just like it's a very overly simplistic way of thinking about how the brain works, or like what parts of the brain are responsible for what. But if your problem is that you're kind of going into almost a trance state, and you're having difficulty staying out of that trance state and staying like fully aware in your frontal lobe, I feel like we got to look at stuff that helps you stay in your frontal lobe, which probably would mean activating your sympathetic nervous system more, which usually means things like getting your heart rate up. Actually, there is something you can do. This is like weirdly like, this is like the opposite of diaphragmatic breathing. So if you can do like and almost kind of like purposely for a short period of time make yourself hyperventilate a little bit, that might help kind of turn your brain back on a little bit and help snap you out of that trance state. Because I'm assuming that for you, probably part of the danger here is because you kind of go a little trancy and you can't like fully pay attention to everything going on. But it would be activating things that keep your sympathetic nervous system online more than your parasympathetic nervous system, which would be, I think, overly relaxing, overly putting you into a trance state if you're getting really, really deep into it. So like grounding exercises would probably be really good, right? Like trying to do things like there's an exercise that like everyone probably knows this one, but it's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's you're trying to, what is it? I always get the order mixed up. It's 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, like 3 things you can, why do I always get, there's not really a precise order, but for some reason I always am like, okay. It's 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. So you can like keep doing grounding exercises to try to keep yourself present physically in the moment. And like, if you cannot do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, if you cannot stay present and grounded, haven't gotten to pull these out yet for this live stream, but I always go back to it. It's always comes up. But this is the DBD. Yeah, the DBD. It's like DVDs, but different. It's called the DBT deck. And this is by Lane Peterson, Psi-D, PESI Publishing. You can get these on Amazon for quite cheap. But the back of this, the purple color, is, I think that is the distress tolerance skills. And the blue is emotional regulation. So, one of the key components of the purple category, distress tolerance, is grounding. So you want to be able to observe things in detail, pay attention to all of your senses, breathe in. I actually wouldn't recommend breathing too slowly and deeply because that can kind of trance you a little bit. Like, I'm not going to say you should hyperventilate the entire time, but kind of having bursts where you're trying to get your heart rate up and like kind of get your sympathetic to kind of overtake things a little bit. You know, having moments where you're kind of more doing that kind of stuff, I think can be helpful for like getting your brain into more action mode as opposed to like passive trance mode. And then just like noticing your connection as you're moving around, being very aware of where your feet are, and just trying to stay very connected to your physical environment, I think will probably be good. Yeah, so that would be what I would start with, is either kind of like that stern order thing and or like physically trying to do things where essentially you're just like pop quizzing your brain the entire time, so you don't have to like worry about trancing out too hard. Like if you're doing like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you're like, treat your environment like an I Spy game is what I would do. Like if you're looking at a scene of a dungeon and you're like, okay, think in your head, I'm at a dungeon and the floor is black linoleum and it feels cold and there's big windows, but they're covered in red curtains and they're heavy velvet and they look really soft, and there's a bench right in front of me and it's padded and it's velvet and it's yellow and it seems old and it's got the, like, just like really get into detail with describing as much as possible with that, and hopefully that'll help kind of keep you centered and grounded. But it's like, if you're somebody who's prone to that, it is very hard to fight for sure. Especially if you're more prone to disassociation or trancing. It's difficult sometimes to like feel totally safe doing that. And you know what? Child leash. If it gets down to it, child leash, always an option. Yeah, it's because they said DBD the first time I said it as opposed to DBT. That was my bad. Missed all the letter sounds there. But hopefully that gives you some things to work with. Oh, what a cute stretch! What a cute stretch, my stretchy girl. What are you doing? Smiling at me. That's what we're doing. She knows that we're almost done. She's like, Mom, I'm ready. Mom, make my dinner. Mom. That's what she's thinking. What a little cutie patoot. That is what she is. Okay. Let me see. We have time for probably one more question here. Ooh, sorry about the migraine headache. That sucks. That sucks. Migraines are the worst. I asked for marks in the Society of Janice Floggers. Said, man, you were hard to mark. Didn't get any marks, but at least I got a great endorphin rush and a good time. Yeah, I've never gotten bruising from a flogging before. I'll get red and stuff, but usually I don't get more than that. So, yeah, I'm with you on that one. But sounds like you had a fun time. That's great. Thank you. When I hit it, everything sounds like a wonderful idea when it really isn't. Yeah, that's the problem, is like when you're in that state, everything sounds so wonderful and fun and amazing. I mean, also like kind of one key thing for that is you can take a note card. You can write out to yourself in your sober pre-everything brain, this is what I'm okay with doing. I am okay with only doing this, this, and this with these people, and if it's not one of these 4 things, it's not happening. Then you stick it in a lanyard and you wear it like a placard, and you just keep it right there in your person, so that way, or you can keep it like in a wallet or something too. You don't have to, I'm just kind of, this is like a cheeky way to do it that's like right there, is very obvious. But like have a key way for yourself to be like, oh, right, sorry, the paperwork says I can only do this. And that way you have something that like, and it literally, like you can literally even have it say, no matter what else I say, do not let me do anything except for this. And then like, you know, hopefully that'll be a big enough deterrent for most people. Oh, thank you. First time commenting, been following for years. Love the education. Well, you are so welcome. Thank you for being here. Right at the very end. I know you are eager to go, aren't you, little lady? Come here. Come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come here, come here, come. You're moving. I can't catch you. You're too far away. Come on. You're just such a little snooty snoot. Look at you. Look at you, pretty girl. Look at you. Hi. Do you have anything you want to say to the people? Any messages for them today? Just to love themselves. It's a great message. It's so accurate. Everyone should love themselves, as you do. Just as you do, because she loves everybody. She loves everybody, even the big scary vet, even the vet tag. She loves all of them. Oh, so good. They actually have everyone wear lanyards at the dungeon. I have been going to. Okay, then perfect. That might be a good way to integrate. Yeah, I might add that info. I mean, at least that would be a good deterrent for most people, right? Like, or also you could talk to the DMs beforehand, right? You could message them and say, hey, I'm so and so. I've been going to these parties. I find it very difficult to like stay fully cognizant because of like how amazing the space is. Just so you know, if you see me playing, I shouldn't be. So can you stop me if you see me going on a piece of furniture with a stranger? Like, you can also recruit the DMs to like help you stay safe and stay within your stated boundaries, and like they should be happy to do that. Are you a good girl? Are we a good girl? She's like, I'm ready to leave. I gotta get out of here. Which, to be fair, I gotta go too. I just want to make sure there's not any, like, one really quick question. I felt wronged by the top, as I felt like they weren't listening to my nonverbal signs, plus gave me a wraparound and didn't like it. It sounds like it was probably a negative experience. I mean, not probably. It was a negative experience for you. And yeah, if they're not listening to your verbals or nonverbals and they're not checking in at all, and they apparently don't seem to think it's a problem they wrapped you, yeah, that's poor topping on them for sure. Hi, good girl. I know. Your little claws are so sharp. You just got them trimmed. How are they sharp? How'd that happen? You're looking for a place to lay down. I can tell. You're like, where can I rest my little chinny chin? Apparently I'm the brains. Sure. Yeah, scenes are weird like that. Planning sometimes is not always the best thing. Sorry if you've answered this, but can you talk about your first munch? Probably in a video. I can talk about that in a video sometime. I don't have time to get into it right now, though, but it's a good question. All right, I'm not seeing any immediate questions here. So I am going to say that's going to be it for tonight. Okay, we're just going to get to enjoy the cuteness. Just get to enjoy the cuteness. Alrighty. Hopefully you all had a good time here today. Thank you so much for joining me. I know last week it was a bust because the tech issues were something else on a level I've not dealt with before. But I thank you all so much for being here. And I platform with most friendly kink educators currently. I mean, probably YouTube. TikTok has some too, but I feel like TikTok's a little bit harder to browse on for like educational content specifically. Anyways, thank you all so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. We'll be here next Friday again at 6. If you want to go ahead and subscribe, turn on notifications, all of that good stuff. Watch the video I did that came out earlier today on kinky TikTok if you want to hear more about that. It's a very fun video, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye. Oh, just like fucking bandit hair everywhere. Just in the air. We aerosolize.